invited my best friend to be maid of honor at my wedding, but later discovered she had secretly slept with my fiancé months before, and half the guests at my wedding already knew the shocking truth while I was left completely humiliated. I asked my best friend to be my maid of honor before I even asked my fiancé if he was ready to set a wedding date. That's how much I trusted her, how much I wanted her standing next to me on the biggest day of my life. And I remember the way her face lit up when I told her, the way she hugged me so tight I could barely breathe, saying how honored she was, how proud she was of me, and in that moment I didn't think twice. I just felt lucky that I had both a man I loved and a friend I trusted more than anyone in the world. But looking back now, that memory feels poisoned. It feels like the start of a cruel joke that everyone else knew the punchline to accept me, because at the time I was just in that headspace of being a bride-to-be, full of excitement, scrolling through wedding dresses on my phone with her late at night, laughing at Pinterest fails, making mood boards, and thinking this is how it's supposed to feel. This is what you dream of when you're little, the two people who matter most to you in the world standing together on your wedding day. But then there were small moments that I brushed off, like the way she teased him sometimes, the way she'd smack his arm when he said something dumb, or how he seemed just a little too comfortable being around her, like leaning in close when he was telling a story, or how sometimes they exchanged looks I couldn't really place, like maybe I was imagining it. And I told myself I was just being paranoid, that it was normal. Because she was my best friend, she had been with me through breakups and family drama and late-night breakdowns, and he was the man I was about to marry, so of course they'd get along, of course they'd be comfortable. And I didn't want to be the kind of jealous bride who read into everything, so I shoved those feelings down and focused on the wedding plans, which honestly were stressful enough without my brain inventing problems. But then the day came, the actual wedding day, and I can still feel that mixture of nerves and excitement, my hands shaking while she zipped up my dress, her eyes shining as she said, "You look incredible." And I believed her. I believed every word. I thought she was genuinely happy for me, and when I walked down the aisle and saw him waiting at the end, my heart was pounding so hard I thought I might faint. But it was joy. It was love. Or at least I thought it was. And then, sometime after the vows, after the pictures, after the toasts, something started to shift. Whispers, glances, people looking at me and then looking away. And I couldn't figure out why. I thought maybe it was my imagination again. Maybe I was just overthinking. But I swear the air felt heavy, like there was a secret floating around that no one wanted to say out loud. And the worst part was I saw it in her too. This nervousness under her smile, this tightness in her laugh, like she was holding something back. And I didn't understand, not then, not until much later, but that day. That very day when I should have been the happiest I'd ever been. Half the people in that room already knew the truth, already knew that the maid of honor who fixed my veil, who clinked her glass to toast my love story, who stood beside me in every single photograph, had slept with my fiancé months before, and I was the last one to find out. I was smiling through pictures, hugging relatives, dancing in my white dress, while everyone else held on to this awful secret, some of them maybe even smirking at how clueless I was, and the thought of that humiliation still makes my chest burn, because there I was thinking my life was perfect, thinking I was surrounded by love, and really I was the punchline of a joke that had been running long before the wedding even started. And the cruelest part is that I had chosen her. I had picked her to stand next to me, to hold my flowers, to fix my hair, to be the person who would share the spotlight with me. And all along she had already betrayed me in the deepest way, and he had too, both of them holding this secret, carrying it right through my wedding day, smiling in pictures that I can't even look at now without feeling sick, because every single one of them is a lie, every memory of that day is tainted, and when I think back to the exact moment it all came crashing down, the moment the whispers finally reached me, it wasn't dramatic, it wasn't loud, it was a quiet sentence spoken by someone who couldn't stand to watch me be in the dark anymore, a cousin maybe, I won't name them, but they leaned in during the reception and said, "I don't know if you know, but she and him, months ago," and my stomach dropped, my ears started ringing, the music, the laughter, everything around me just blurred, and I remember gripping the edge of the table because I felt like I was going to collapse, and in that instant the whole night, the whole engagement, the whole friendship, shattered into pieces I couldn't put back together, and I couldn't even cry right then because it was too big, too shocking, my body just went numb. And all I could think was, how could she do this? How could he? How could everyone know but me? And I looked over at her, my maid of honor, my best friend, and the way her face froze when she saw me looking, that told me everything. No words needed, no denial, no explanation, just that look. And that was the moment I knew my wedding day wasn't mine anymore. It was theirs, their secret, their betrayal, and my humiliation. I didn't stand up to her right there in the middle of the reception, though every fiber of my being longed to. I wanted to scream, to break the glass in my hand on the floor, to ask for answers from everyone, but something in me just froze. Like my brain was saying, don't make a scene, don't give them the satisfaction, and so instead I slipped away. I remember walking out of that room in my wedding dress, through people who kept on smiling like everything was okay, like I wasn't breaking, and I found this small little hallway off of the bathrooms, just quiet enough to catch my breath. But my chest tightened, my hands shaking, my whole body shaking with adrenaline and shock, and all I could think was, please let this not be real, please let this be some misunderstanding. But when I saw her find me, when I saw her face go pale and guilty, I knew it wasn't rumor, it was true, and the way she whispered my name like she was begging me not to hate her, it made my stomach turn over, because how could she even get the words past her lips when she knew what she'd done? And I remember my voice cracking when I asked her, "Is it true?" Just 3 words, and she didn't answer right away, she just looked down, her eyes filling with tears, and that was deafening, that was saying everything, and eventually she nodded barely, but enough, and my heart shattered right then and there. Because she didn't lie to me, she didn't deny it, she accepted it with her silence, and I felt something inside me shatter that I don't think will ever fully heal. And then there were the excuses, the apologies, the words that she tried to hurl at me, like they could close the wound. It was a mistake, she whispered, it was before you guys were serious. It didn't mean anything, I swear. And I just stood there, my dress heavy on my shoulders, my makeup probably smeared at this point, wondering how dare she try to water this down, how dare she say nothing when this meant everything to me, because it wasn't about him, it was about her, about the one person I trusted more than any other human being, the one person I shared everything with, the one person I counted on every step of the way through this relationship, and she was the one who crossed that line, and I couldn't even muster up the words to say it at first. I just shook my head, because what was there to say, what possibly could make this okay? And then he appeared. Of course he did, my brand new husband walking down the hall with the same look, that guilty, pale, cornered look, and I remember looking at him and feeling like I was staring at a stranger, someone I didn't know at all, someone who had been lying to me for months. And I asked him too, did it happen? And his mouth opened like he was going to deny it, like he was going to spin some story. But then he saw her standing there, saw the way I was looking at both of them, and he just dropped his head and said, yes, but it was a mistake, it was months ago, it's not like that anymore. And hearing those words, on my wedding day, in my wedding dress, it was like being stabbed twice, once by each of them, and I couldn't breathe. I literally had to grab the wall to keep myself standing, and my mind was spinning with all the little moments that suddenly made sense, all the looks, the jokes, the times I brushed off my own instincts. And now here they were, the 2 people I had loved most, admitting it casually like the timing didn't matter, like the fact that they had carried this secret right into my wedding day wasn't the ultimate betrayal. And I think what hurt most was knowing they had both stood there, letting me believe everything was perfect, letting me walk down that aisle, exchange vows, kiss him, all while they knew this truth. And I just kept asking in my head why. Why didn't they tell me? Why didn't one of them come clean before it got this far, before I became the fool in front of everyone? And the truth is I still don't have an answer. Maybe it was selfishness, maybe it was fear, maybe it was just easier for them to let me live in ignorance. But whatever it was, it destroyed me, because I felt like my whole life, my whole sense of reality, had just been ripped out from under me. And I told them both to leave me alone, my voice shaking but firm. And I remember the way she tried to reach for me, saying my name again. But I stepped back, I couldn't let her touch me. And the way he looked at me, desperate, trying to say it didn't mean anything, that he loved me, that we were married now and that's what mattered, it just made me feel sick, because those words were nothing, they were lies on top of lies, and all I could do was walk away. I don't even remember where I went, just that I ended up outside, the cool night air hitting me like a slap, and I stood there in my dress under the stars, listening to the muffled music of my own wedding reception, thinking this is supposed to be the happiest night of my life, and instead it's the loneliest, the most humiliating, because half the people in there probably know, half of them are probably whispering about me, and I'm the last one to see it, the last one to know, and I've never felt so small, so exposed, so broken, and the worst part was, I couldn't even cry, not then, the tears just wouldn't come, it was like my body shut down, and all I had was this numb, hollow ache inside me, and I stayed out there until someone came looking, maybe my mom, maybe a friend, I can't even remember who, but I know I plastered on some kind of face and went back in eventually, because what else could I do? The night wasn't over, the guests were still there, and I felt trapped in this nightmare I couldn't wake up from, trapped between pretending and breaking down completely. And honestly, that night, that choice to go back in, to fake my way through the rest of my own wedding, That might have been the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. When I walked back into that reception hall, it felt like stepping onto a stage where everyone already knew the script except me. Like every laugh, every clink of a glass, every whispered conversation was about me. And I couldn't unsee it, couldn't unhear it. The way certain people looked at me and then quickly looked away. The way some smiled too wide like they were covering for something. And I felt like a ghost at my own wedding, drifting from table to table, hugging relatives, smiling for pictures while inside I was crumbling. And the whole time I kept catching glimpses of them, him and her, circling the room like nothing had happened, like they weren't holding this unbearable secret that had just gutted me. And that was the part that made me feel crazy, because on the outside nothing looked wrong, but inside I knew everything was ruined, everything had changed, and the dissonance of that made me feel like I was living two realities at once, the one everyone else saw and the one I couldn't escape inside my head. And the thing is, I wanted so badly to pull someone aside, to scream, to demand they admit it in front of everyone, but I kept swallowing it, swallowing the words, because I was terrified of making it real, terrified of tearing the mask off in front of my whole family and friends. And I think that's when I realized how deep the humiliation went, that I was already calculating how to keep my own pain hidden, how to play along, because the truth had already made me the fool. And I didn't want to give them more reason to see me as weak, and so I played bride. I cut the cake, I danced with my dad, I posed for pictures with friends, and every single smile was forced, every laugh was hollow, and inside my chest it felt like I was carrying a weight so heavy I couldn't breathe. And I'll never forget the moment during the bouquet toss when she, my maid of honor, stood beside me, grinning like everything was normal, and I had to hold the flowers in my hand and resist the urge to turn and throw them in her face, because she didn't deserve to be standing there. She didn't deserve any part of that moment, and yet there she was, smiling, waving, acting like the perfect best friend, and I just wanted to disappear. And by the time the night ended, by the time the guests trickled out and the music stopped, I felt more drained than I've ever felt in my life, like I had aged years in a single night. And when it was finally just me and him in the room, my new husband, the man I had just married, I couldn't even look at him, I couldn't even let him touch me. And he knew the wall between us was already up, and he tried. He really tried. He said things like, "It was before we were serious," and "I didn't mean for it to happen," and "You're the one I love, you're the one I chose," and each word was like pouring salt in a wound. Because how was I supposed to believe any of it? How was I supposed to feel like I was chosen when he had already chosen her once, and she had already chosen him, and the both of them had chosen to hide it from me? And I remember I just sat there in silence, staring at the floor, while he begged me to believe him, and I didn't answer. I couldn't, because the truth is, in that moment, I didn't even know what I felt for him anymore. I didn't know if I hated him, or if I hated her more, or if I hated myself for not seeing it sooner, for ignoring every gut instinct, every little red flag. And the worst part was, I kept thinking back on all the wedding planning moments, the late night talks with her, the way she smiled when I tried on dresses, the way she toasted us at the engagement party. And I realized all of it was fake, all of it was a performance. And that realization made me feel like my whole life was a lie, like nothing was real. And I didn't sleep that night, not even for a minute. I just lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, listening to him breathe beside me, feeling more alone than I've ever felt. And by morning my decision was made. I couldn't stay, I couldn't pretend, I couldn't spend my life with someone who betrayed me in the most intimate way, and I couldn't keep a friend who stabbed me in the back so deeply. So I got up, I packed a bag, I called my mom, and when he woke up and saw what I was doing, he panicked, he begged, he followed me around the room saying he would do anything, therapy, counseling, anything. But I couldn't even look at him. I just said, "I can't," and my voice broke on those words, because as much as I loved him, as much as I had dreamed of a life with him, love wasn't enough anymore, not after this, not after knowing that my best friend and my husband had shared something behind my back, something they both thought I'd never find out. And when I walked out of that house with my bag in my hand, it felt like my heart was being ripped out, but it also felt like the only choice I had left, because staying would have meant betraying myself, betraying my own worth. And I wasn't willing to do that, not even for him, not even for her. And as the car pulled away, as I watched that chapter of my life shrink in the rearview mirror, all I felt was emptiness, and a faint, quiet question that I still don't fully have the answer to. How do you start over when the two people you trusted most are the very people who broke you? The days after I left felt like moving through fog, like I was awake but not really living, because every time I closed my eyes I saw her face, his face, that hallway, that moment when the truth came crashing down, and I couldn't stop replaying it, couldn't stop wondering what I missed, how long people had known, what they said behind my back, and the humiliation of it cut deeper than anything, because it wasn't just betrayal in private. It was betrayal on display. Half the guests at my wedding, watching me smile and dance, knowing I was blind to the truth, and it made me feel small, pathetic even, like I was the last one in on a cruel joke, and for weeks I carried that shame everywhere I went, even grocery shopping or driving to work. I'd feel like people were whispering about me, even if they weren't, because once you've been humiliated like that, you start to imagine the whole world is in on it. And I kept asking myself over and over why she didn't just tell me, why he didn't just come clean, why nobody thought I deserved the truth before I walked down that aisle, and the answers never came, just more silence. And eventually her text started, long paragraphs about how sorry she was, how it didn't mean anything, how she loved me like a sister and hated herself for hurting me. And I read them with shaking hands, crying sometimes, raging other times. But I never replied, because what could I even say? There are no words to stitch together a friendship after that kind of wound. And as for him, he called, he showed up at my mom's house more than once, standing at the door with flowers, with letters, with promises that he'd never hurt me again. And I almost gave in once. I almost opened the door, because my heart still ached for him, still wanted to believe the version of him I thought I knew. But then I'd remember the look on his face when he admitted it, the way he let me walk into that marriage blind, and the anger would come flooding back, and I'd close the door, because the truth is, forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and I couldn't live a life pretending that betrayal never happened, not when it had carved such a deep scar in me. And so I stayed gone, I stayed silent, and little by little the noise around it quieted, people stopped asking, the whispers faded, life went on, though mine felt stalled, and I started therapy, because I couldn't untangle all the pain on my own. And in those sessions I began to see that my worth wasn't tied to what they did, that their betrayal said more about them than it did about me, though some nights it still didn't feel that way. Some nights I still felt like the fool in the white dress, but other nights, quieter ones, I began to feel the faintest strength building inside me, like maybe surviving this, maybe walking away, maybe refusing to pretend, was its own kind of power. And slowly I started doing little things for myself again, going out with coworkers, picking up hobbies I'd dropped while planning the wedding, and I began to realize that the pieces of me that felt broken weren't gone, they were just waiting for me to pick them up, one at a time. And it wasn't pretty, it wasn't fast, but it was real, and I think the hardest part was grieving the friendship, because losing him hurt, but losing her, that cut differently, because she wasn't just my maid of honor, she was my person, the one who knew my secrets, my fears, my dreams, and the thought of her knowing me so well and still choosing to hurt me was something I had to sit with, something I may never fully understand. But over time I stopped waiting for that understanding, I stopped waiting for some apology that would magically fix it, and I started accepting that some wounds don't heal the way you want them to, some stay tender. But you live with them, you grow around them, and one day you wake up and realize you're still standing, maybe scarred, but standing, and that's enough. And when I think back to that wedding, now, to the photos I can't bear to frame, to the memories I can't untangle from betrayal, I feel a strange mix of sorrow and strength, sorrow for the girl in the white dress who didn't know the truth, and strength for the woman who walked away once she did. And maybe that's the only clarity I'll ever have, that sometimes love betrays you, sometimes friendship betrays you, sometimes the very people you trust most break you in half. But if you can stand back up, if you can walk away with your dignity intact, then you haven't really lost yourself, not completely. And maybe that's what survival looks like, not erasing the hurt, not forgetting the humiliation, but carrying it, learning from it, letting it harden you in some places and soften you in others. And I don't know what the rest of my story will look like. I don't know if I'll ever trust someone that deeply again. But I do know this. I'm no longer the fool smiling at a room full of whispers. I'm the one who saw the truth, faced it, and chose myself over the people who broke me. And even though that choice came wrapped in pain, it also came with a quiet kind of freedom. And maybe that's enough for now.